Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Mark Henry. I'm a senior engineer with Opmantic's North American office located in Charlotte, North Carolina. Today we're going to be talking about the advanced Open-AudIT setup and configuration. This is a follow-on to a basic lecture that we did late last year. You should complete that one in its entirety. Make sure that you understand the options for installation and basic configuration before you attempt the concepts that we're going to be talking about today. Like all of our GoToWebinars, we will be following up for those of you who are live here today with an email with a link to the recording of today's webinar. Of course, you can also find this on Opmantic's YouTube site, as well on opmantic.com under the Learn portal. If you have any questions today, depending on which client for a GoToWebinar you're running, you can either use the chat window or the questions window. We have a couple engineers here who are going to be monitoring those and passing some along for me to answer publicly, and other people will be answering directly to people who ask questions. Upon the completion of the webinar, or if you happen to need to leave early, you will be presented with a very short exit survey. It's just 3 questions. Please take a moment and complete that if you would. You can get a copy of today's presentation, our PowerPoint in PDF format. If you look at the GoToWebinar handouts panel, you can download a copy and follow along, or just have it for your own edification later. Of course, if you're on Opmantic's YouTube channel, you can come to opmantic.com, look in the Learn portal area, and we will have a copy of the webinar PDF there, as well as a link to the video. Today, we're really going to be talking about 5 focused concepts, kind of a second tier advanced level of configuration for Open-AudIT. We're going to be talking about authentication and access, particularly looking at using Active Directory or LDAP for authentication. We're going to be talking about how to use the concept of the organization, or in Open-AudIT we call it the org, to help manage access to devices and features. But of course, org also gives controls to a lot of other planes as well, a lot of other tables and fields. So we're going to be talking about that in detail. We're going to talk about how to monitor files and folders for changes on both Linux and Windows systems. We're going to talk about how to create, populate, and report on custom fields. And finally, we're really going to take a close look at the brand new discovery scan options that were released in Open-AudIT 3.0.0, which was just recently released. 3.0.0 is available in both a Linux and a Windows installer base now, and as I understand it, is also installed on the Opmantic virtual machine, which is now based on CentOS 7. I like to marry all of our webinars back to Gartner's IT Service Management Maturity Model, really kind of give you an idea of where our products can help you move from a level 0, level 1 location further up into a solid level 2, and even into a level 3, and starting to touch on a level 4. And really, from our perspective, when you're looking strictly at Open-AudIT, it'll help obviously as a CMDB, so it's a system device inventory. It will also help to some extent with problem management, because you can identify when systems disappear or when software is added or removed from it, capabilities changed, etc. Those, of course, all help you lead into problem prediction, system automation. It makes you more of a mature change in asset performance management solution as well, and again moves you further into levels 3 and 4. If you have any questions over the Gartner IT Service Management Maturity Model, or how Opmantic solutions can help you move your process or move your IT department further along into it to provide further value, please feel free to reach out. Our contact information is at the end of the presentation. Just a couple of useful references for everyone. Of course, you have the Opmantic Wiki. We maintain a separate section of our wiki for each of the Opmantic products that are in our solution portfolio. The link here goes to the Open-AudIT homepage. Open-AudIT also maintains its own forum as well, so make sure you check out open-audit.org and take a look at the forum there, register, and follow along in the conversations that are there. Auditing also maintains, as part of our wiki, a community questions board. It's not necessarily as dynamic as the Open-AudIT forum, but it is still very useful, and there's a lot of really good comments and questions and answers that are there, and you can feel free to post your own question as well. Finally, of course, if you're a supported customer, so if you're using Open-AudIT Professional or Enterprise, you can get support by simply emailing support@auditing.com, and one of our world-class engineers will be happy to help you out. If you have any questions at all on any of our products, or you'd like to know more about pricing and availability, please reach out to usa@auditing.com. If you're not in the North American region covered by the USA sales team, we'll be happy to do an introduction to the account manager in the region where you're located. All right, before we get into the new features, what I'd like to do is just touch briefly upon the different licensing levels. Open-AudIT does come in 3 different licensing levels. So we offer a free and open source community edition. So the community edition supports network device discovery, agentless discovery, server inventory software for change monitoring, software license monitoring as well, IT asset tracking, and it does support system integration using custom fields. Of course, community, professional, and enterprise all share those 6 features as well. Leaving the community edition and moving on to the professional edition, we add in network analysis reports and dashboards, geographical maps using Google Maps as the back end. It has a very strong device export process. So you can export devices in many different formats and ways, from JSON, CSV, and XML. There's a network automation tool for automating your network discoveries and report creation, as well as an enhanced visual reporting tool. So those additional 5 features are available in the professional edition, as well as commercial support. And then moving on to enterprise, you gain the ability for rack management and visualization. So if you're running a data center, if you have multiple racks of equipment, you can visually lay out those racks and add devices to it and keep track of those devices visually, as well as discover them automatically and maintain them through the back end. We also add in cloud discovery and auditing. Currently, you can audit Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services. So we'll be expanding that out to include Google Cloud as well soon. The Enterprise Edition also supports high scale and high availability, meaning that you can scale out horizontally. You can have multiple collectors deployed either logically in your network or out across a large geographic footprint, all reporting back to a single master server and single database. We also offer file folder integrity auditing, system baselining, very granular role-based access controls. RBAC is available in the professional edition, but it only includes 5 predefined authorization levels that can't be edited. In the Enterprise edition, you can actually edit and modify, create new roles within the system and then assign users to them. And finally, at the Enterprise edition, we also include the ability to integrate with agents and CMDB systems via a RESTful API. Now, it's important to understand that all 3 of these editions ship with the same installer. So whether you're installing on Linux or Windows, you get all 3 editions, and it's simply the matter of entering a license key that enables or disables certain features at each licensing level. So if you don't enter any license key at all, the system simply runs as the community edition, and then we have specific licenses for professional and enterprise. So without further ado, let's talk about user management in the system. So the first piece to take a look at really is the concept of role-based access control, or RBAC. The way RBAC works in our system, you have it as the core definition, the idea of what we call an organization. In an organization, you can think of as a pyramid structure, where you have the default organization at the tip of the pyramid, the very top, and then coming down in layers below that, you have organizations that you can define. So for example, you may have the corporate entity as the default, as the top of the pyramid. You might have the different departments within that organization below that, and then below the departments, you might have the different work groups or work centers in each of those departments. And so Users can be assigned to a level within that organization, and they are only able to see or have access to devices that are at that level or below them. They can't see devices assigned to levels of access above them. And that's an important thing to understand, because as you start thinking about access to the system, you may want to create roles for database administrators, roles for Linux server administrators versus Windows server administrators versus networking people versus procurement. And so understanding not only what level within the organization an individual is assigned, but also understanding what organization level or what level within the organization a device is assigned to is of great importance, because those two pieces really control how things are accessed within the system. So stepping over to Open-AudIT, and again, we're using Open-AudIT Enterprise 3.0. This is installed on a Linux CentOS server. So we're going to take a look at Manage Roles, and we're going to look at the default roles that ship with Enterprise. So we're shipping with 6 different roles that are defined. 5 of these are really roles for users. The collector role is designed specifically if you're scaling horizontally and vertically, and you're going to have collectors working independent of a master server, and then with a master server at the head with the database existing there. So the collector role is not a role that you would assign to a human, to a person. It is a role that you would only use with a collector itself. But each of these roles have specific access. So for example, if we take a look at the user role, you'll see we have the definition of the user role at the top. And then as we scroll down, you'll see that we have the different role permissions for people who have been assigned the user role. So I'm logged in as an administrator, so I can actually see this content. I can also edit this, so I can expand this if I want to. I can add additional features for this role, and I can even create a new role if I want to. And then if we take a look at users, so I'm going to go Manage List Users. And we have a user here called Test that I created. And so, for example, you can see that this user is active. So the user, the account itself is enabled. It's a user account rather than a collector account. We have the roles, and each individual user account can have more than one role assigned to it. If you assign more than one role to a user account, the user has the highest level of privilege granted on a case-by-case basis amongst all of those roles that you assign to them. You can also assign what dashboard the user has as their default when they log in. The user can change that, and that will be reflected here as well. And then as we scroll further down, you'll see that we define what organizations, or orgs again, that the user has access to. And then below that, you have just a breakdown of all the different roles. So what that allows you to do is, if you're creating a user or editing a user, and you either need to view or edit an organization, or view or edit a role, you can do that directly from inside the user account. So you can jump over to that section. So there is a difference. Again, so we've talked about the concept of RBAC, so role-based access control, how roles are created, and then how they're assigned to users. The first step in a user accessing the system is for them to be able to authenticate, right? So that user needs to be able to authenticate somehow with Open-AudIT in order to gain access to the application itself. There are 3 different kind of built-in methodologies or options available for you. Open-AudIT comes with its own internal authentication system already pre-built in. All of the user account information, passwords, and everything are stored and encrypted in the Open-AudIT database. So all of that's available there. As a second level, you can also use Apache's HT password system, so that's available to you as well. And of course, you can also build out and assign LDAP or MS LDAP if you want to use Active Directory to, again, act as the authentication source. You can have up to 3 different options available to you, to a user. They're all defined in opcommon.nmis. The order that they're entered, so it's actually auth method 1, auth method 2, auth method 3. The order that they're entered inside opcommon.nmis is the order that they're attempted. So when a user logs in, if their username and their password match inside HT password, then the ball falls into that, and it says, okay, yep, this user's been authenticated, and then the system tries to determine what user access level they have. So it moves from, again, authentication to access and authorization to determine where it's coming from. For Open-AudIT and HT password, the authentication level is taken from internally, from inside Open-AudIT, whereas with LDAP or MS LDAP, you can either take the access and authorization internally from Open-AudIT, or it can be passed in. So that allows you actually to define not just authentication, but authorization level as well using MS LDAP or Open LDAP. So taking a quick look at what the LDAP definition looks like. So it's admin LDAP server, list LDAP servers. You see we just have one sample here. So we define the LDAP server, we give it the domain, the host, the port number, whether it uses secure LDAP S or not, what version of LDAP to use, generally speaking that's version 3, whether LDAP should be used for roles or not. So again, that's authentication versus authorization. What type of server this is as well. So is it Open LDAP or Active Directory? The base DN, user DN if needed, user membership attributes, how often it should be refreshed, DN account information and password if necessary. So you're defining the entire communication with, again, the Active Directory, the LDAP server. A common mistake we often see here is that users will try to create an LDAP administrator account and provide a password, where in most cases, a user, an LDAP user, actually has the right to look up and authenticate their own account information. So this is almost never needed with an LDAP implementation, although it is often needed with an LDAP S, a secure LDAP implementation. If you have questions about the settings for any of these fields, we do cover many of them in the notes on the right and also on the LDAP wiki page, which is in the PDF. I do recommend, however, that you speak with your authentication team in your IT department. Whoever's in charge of your LDAP server and LDAP accounts will know exactly what needs to go into specifics like the base DN, user DM, membership attribute fields, and if the DN account and password are needed or not. So they'll have that information available to them. Regarding troubleshooting LDAP configurations, we've actually built out a very detailed wiki page on how to do this. Generally speaking, it's just 4 simple steps. You set your log level to 7. You clear out the logs table in the database, and the wiki page has step-by-step instructions for each of these. You log in using the LDAP account and then retrieve the error code from the logs table. It's really just that straightforward. And if we take a look at the web page here, so this is the Open-AudIT wiki page, the home page, and I'm using my my browser's ability to search. So I can search for LDAP. I can find several different entries for it, and we have an entry here, Troubleshooting LDAP Logins. So I'm just going to right-click on that, open it in a new tab. The key to troubleshooting LDAP logins really is the table at the bottom of the screen, because once you attempt to log in, we will capture the error code coming back from the LDAP server. The LDAP server can be very, very verbose. It'll actually send us back an error code. We will translate that code and provide you with a plain language explanation. That's what we call the log line. So you can actually take that error code right from the log and search this page for it. And when you find it, it'll give you information under symptom. So it'll tell you exactly what's going on. And in many cases, we'll have troubleshooting information here and what you should do about it. If you're attempting to use LDAP, I recommend very, very strongly that you start with LDAP doing authentication only and not authorization. Get authentication working just so you can log in through LDAP and then come into Open-AudIT. And then once you have that working, expand it into getting the roles sent to you as well. And we have instructions in the wiki on what roles you'll have to create on your LDAP server and then assign to users. And then that will allow you to let your users log in with their LDAP accounts and have whatever level of access you want to assign to them, whether it's admin, org admin, user, reporter, etc. The organization. So I know we've spoken a little bit about this concept of an organizational pyramid when we started talking about users and RBAC control and how they get in. Again, think about the idea of the organization as being a pyramid, where at the very point of the pyramid is whatever the top level that will be using Open-AudIT in your group. It might be a department. It might be the entire company. It might be a holding company for many businesses. And then the first layer underneath that holding company might be the different businesses, and then within them, the departments. So however high up you want to go, just imagine that the top of that pyramid is the top of the organization structure that's going to be using Open-AudIT, or that you're going to be capturing and tracking data about your organization. This is kind of really a key piece to Open-AudIT, and it's one I think that many people don't appreciate how far-reaching the idea of the organization is to the heart of how everything is controlled and managed inside Open-AudIT. So not only are devices assigned to an organizational level, so for example, you might have an organizational level for your East Coast IT group. And so you might assign devices to that, to the East Coast group, and then you might have a West Coast group as well. Well, if those are at the second level of the organization, a person assigned at the default, at the peak, at the top of that pyramid, has access to those two devices in both of those organizations because they're below that individual. But someone who's at that level, who's at the East Coast level, would not have access to West Coast devices. So a user account assigned to the East Coast office or level of the org pyramid would not have access to devices on the West Coast level of the pyramid. So it's important to understand those types of distinctions, that not only is it where is the device assigned, but it's also where the user is assigned within the organizational structure as well. And those two pieces overlay. And it's not just devices. Almost every other table within Open-AudIT. So it's keeping track of things like visual racks. So if you do rack organization, you can actually assign a rack to an organization level as well. You can assign devices to organizational levels. You can assign custom graphs and charts, reports, summaries. All of those can be assigned to organization levels. And someone who does not have access to that organization level cannot use that resource. So if you create a report that's only available for the East Coast office, then people on the West Coast office cannot use that report for themselves. They can't access that report. They can't edit the report. They can't change the report. And they can't see the results of that report either. So stepping over to Open-AudIT, manage orgs, and we only have a small handful of organizations here. You can see over on the right-hand side the device count. So we have some devices that are in the West Coast organization, some that are in the North American office on the East Coast. We have one device there, and we have 79 devices that are assigned to the default office. And so if I look at the details for, let's say, the West Coast office, I have a definition of the West Coast office. We can even create a location for the West Coast office, and then we can assign this office to that location. And of course, we can take a look at the devices that are assigned to the West Coast office. And we can see the 5 devices that are there. File and folder auditing. So we're often asked during demonstrations or when prospects are evaluating Open-AudIT, how can they keep track of changes to files? If someone adds a file to a directory, if someone modifies a file or deletes a file from a directory, and whether that's an individual file or groups of files. And that's where the Open-AudIT Enterprise file and folder auditing really comes in into its own. It's important to understand that because Open-AudIT is agentless, we don't have real-time eyes on if a file is opened or changed or deleted. File folder auditing only happens when an audit of the device that has the folder or the file on it is done. So if you're auditing a device once a week, then you'll be able to see once a week whether that file has changed since the last audit. It may have changed once or may have changed 10,000 times. You'll only know that it changed. You won't know who changed it. You won't know when that file changed. You'll only know that sometime in between the previous audit and the current audit that file changed. So the first step in file folder auditing is to define a path and or file name. And so what I've done is I've selected Discover, Files, List Files. And so this gives us a list. We've just got 3 different folders that we're looking at. The first one happens to be a Linux folder. So we've given it a name, OMK-conf folder. And so you can see the path, /user/local/OMK//conf for configuration. And then a short description of it. Below that, you can see that we're doing a file audit. So specifically, we're providing a path, user local nms8 conf op config. Now notice that those are 2 different folders, right? Here we have nms8 and then here we have OMK. So those are 2 different folder paths. And in the second row, we are only looking at a specific file, op config. So we want to know if that one file has changed or not. And then finally, the bottom one, we're looking at the Windows temp folder, so it's C:\temp, and we're just looking at that one folder and no one's provided a description for it. So let's just take a look here at this the second option, opconfig.nms, and you'll see that we've simply defined the path. You cannot from here you can't browse to a path and be able to select a file folder. So you'll have to have that to either type in or paste into the field. We often have people ask us, well, why don't you, I don't see a way to define whether this is a Linux machine or if this is a path on a Windows machine. So the difference is quite straightforward. It's just the way the paths are done. On a Linux machine, you use a /. On the Windows machine, you do need to define the drive that you're looking at, and then of course the path structure itself, as you normally would. and taking a quick look at the Windows temp folder. The path location does not allow wildcards, so you can't look in and replace, for example, C with the D folder, for example. So the path option does not allow wildcards. The way the system works is when it audits a machine with a thoughtful operating system, it checks to see if any of the file folder paths that you've entered is available and populated, and if it is, if the file exists or if the folder exists, then it will actually run an audit. On an individual file, what it does is it actually looks at the size of the file and it creates a hash for that and then stores it there on the machine. The next time that an audit is run, it creates a new hash for the file and compares it against the existing, and if they're the same, then the file hasn't been changed. Now, if they're different, the file may have been edited, it may have been opened and saved with no changes to it. And so that's important to understand those pieces. If you're doing an audit of a folder and a new file is added, that becomes a change after the initial audit of that folder. If a file is deleted or removed from the folder, then that would be a change as well. And so all of those are raised, and there are reports for file folder changes. So for example, I can go report, change, files, and it'll give me a list of all of the file folder changes over time, whether they were size changes or add or removes. Creating, populating, and reporting on custom fields. Open-AudIT has the ability for you to create and populate custom fields pretty much wherever you want to within the application. So although we come with many custom tables, and each of those have lots and lots of predefined fields to them, there's always some need for something custom that works specifically for the way that you want to do business. It is Automatic's position that it is not our role to force a workflow on our clients. Instead, what we try to do is provide a system that is flexible enough to support multiple different workflows, and then provide the features and functionality needed so that you can accomplish your tasks and your goals the way you want to using our tools. That being said, let's take a look at custom fields. So manage fields, and again, list fields shows you all the custom fields in the system. We have several that are here. So for example, we have a custom field. It's a var character. So we have 3 different options and types of fields that are supported. So you can have a text field called a var character. You can have a list box, so pick one of many, or you could have a date field. So we actually provide a date selector. And so in this option here, you can see, for example, there's a loopback IP. There's a couple of the pieces that are here. Offsite laptop, for example, is a list. Let's take a look at that one. And this one provides just 2 options in the list box. It provides a yes, no. And let's take a look at another option for a list. So this one just gives us one option. We can absolutely add more that are here. So we can have several different drop-down options that are here inside this box. So inside these options, you can choose where you want the custom field to appear. You can also choose under what types of devices. So again, going back to the org ID, you might assign a custom field to only appear at devices assigned to a specific organization. So you would assign the custom field to that organization. You can also assign a custom field based on a certain type of device. So your choices here, again, this is a list box. This is not a multi-select, so I could not pick, for example, Windows computers, servers, and workstations. I can't pick 3 things. I can only pick 1 at a time. But you can pick all computers, Debian computers, CentOS computers. You could define your own group ID if you wanted to. So you can define your own type of device group if you want to go that direction. And of course, you can always do all. And what that does for you, for example, let's take a look at a device report. And I'm just going to take a look at a specific device. So we have Asgard here. It's a Cisco router. And over on the left-hand side, I have fields. And then these are the custom fields that meet the criteria for this device. And so from here, I can make changes if I want to. You can see that I have my 2 new field options, option 2 and option 3 that I just created. And then other additional pieces that are here. You can use the Open-AudIT API to push values into fields. So for example, you might have some business process that you run once a day to pull information from a third-party server or database, and then look up a specific device and then set values within its custom fields. Of course, if you're going to create custom fields, it's often useful if you can create and edit a query. So you want to be able to create a report that includes a custom field in it. So when I go to the report dropdown, everything that's listed here is a report. These are nothing more than SQL statements that reach out, run against the data in the database, and then produce a list for me. So for example, I might want to look at, give me a list of all the offsite laptops. And you'll see that I just set Asgard to a field value of yes. And so I've got that custom field here. You might also create a list of devices. Let's say what they were last seen by, what process. Were they seen by Nmap, SSH? Were they seen by WMI? Were they seen by cloud auditing? And so now you have a report on all the devices and what they were last seen by. And of course, you can still search through all of this. So for example, if I want to search through cloud, I can just type cloud or Nmap. If I want to understand why am I getting so many unclassified or unknown systems, I can start looking at these, and I can still sort to look for duplicate IP addresses. So a lot of capability that's there. All of your queries are broken down here under Manage List Queries. So we ship, Augmantic ships, or Open-AudIT rather, ships with about 40 custom queries built into it. In Community Edition, you have to enable the queries that you want to be able to see and use. In Professional and Enterprise are all available to you. All of the details of these are available by clicking the Details button. And what that means for you is that SQL statement that creates this report is there. So you can take it, you can copy it, you can paste it into any text editor. You can take 2 different reports and really by breaking down the SQL statement, which is what defines what's in the what's in the report itself and how the report is formatted, what it looks like. By taking multiple ones, you can actually bash them together and get back the information that you're looking for. So it's kind of a neat approach. It's flexible, it's easy to use, it's easy to share different report structures. In fact, if you come to the Open-AudIT Wiki and you look for queries and reporting, we have several different wiki pages which go into this in great detail on how to create not just reports, but also summaries. And they go into also lots of samples. So many of the reports that you've seen me pull up here under the other menu, many of these sample reports are available on that on those wiki pages. So you can actually break those down and see exactly what's going on and understand what's happening. discovery scan options. This is really one of the, I think, most exciting improvements in Open-AudIT Enterprise 3.0 is the idea of really having very, very granular control over the discoveries. So there's kind of 2 layers of settings. The first is within your configuration. So if you go admin, configuration, discovery, you have lots of discovery options that are there. Those are your defaults. So if you create a new discovery, that discovery is going to inherit the defaults from the configuration file. And then from there, you can actually do some really, really granular stuff. So here I'm going to select the details button. And if you're coming from an older version of Open-AudIT Enterprise, you're probably already looking and saying, wow, there's a lot of new colors and buttons and options on each screen. There are. But take a moment. All the screens are similarly designed, so they follow the same kind of UI metaphor. So details are a blue button with an eyeball, executes green with an arrow, and the devices are a small monitor with a purple background. So if we take a look at the details for this network, we start automatically on the summary page. So if you look at, there's a menu down the left-hand side now. So this gives you a quick overview, the current status of this discovery, when it was started, when it was completed, how many minutes it took, how many IP addresses were scanned, how many devices discovered, how many devices audited, and then any devices not audited. And again, you have those access buttons over here on the right. So you have that purple button to give you the all 24. You have a green one to show you the 19 that were audited, and there's a little kind of orange yellow one down here to give you 5 that weren't audited. And so that can give you a lot of power right off the bat in helping you troubleshoot. Looking at the menu on the left-hand side, selecting details. Now the top half, if you're working with Open-AudIT Community Edition, you only have access to this top half. That's all you get access to. You also cannot schedule a repetitive audit through Community. So you can only run an audit when the interface is open. But if you scroll down, you'll see that you have options for your discovery options, all of your settings. If you have the Professional Edition, you can adjust some of these options that are here, but the bulk of the adjustments are only available in the Enterprise Edition. The next piece that you'll have down here at the bottom are device matching rules. Again, you'll actually inherit the device matching rules from the configuration file, and then you can you can edit those in the Enterprise version. So you can change those on a scan by scan basis. So you can have different subnet discovery scans that follow different rules. And there are lots and lots of really cool options that are here. So breaking down first just the overall discovery options. So you've got ultra fast, super fast, fast, medium classic, medium slow, and ultra slow. I'm not really sure why we included slow and ultra slow. I'm sure there are some benefits to that mode, although I haven't seen them yet. Whoop, apologies. Hit the scroll wheel. So looking at the discovery scan options, again, only a couple of options are available in the Community Edition. You also get a few more options in Professional. You can set them per discovery rather than globally. So Community only allows you to change your default for all discoveries, whereas at Professional, you can change your discovery scan option on a discovery by discovery basis. And then in the Enterprise Edition, you get a tremendous amount of flexibility to read, write, update, delete, scan options, create custom scan options per discovery. You can exclude IP, ranges, subnets per discovery, exclude ports per discovery, set device timeout, and do custom SSH ports per discovery, which could be very, very important. And then, of course, do matching rules per discovery. So the Enterprise Edition, when it comes to really having a very, very fine granular control over your subnet discoveries, the Enterprise Edition really takes the cake. Apologies. My computer seems to be moving us in different directions. So when it comes to discovery scan types, the medium or classic scan type is as close as the pre-version 3.0 scan options would let us get. So that's really, really close to the, again, the pre-3.0, so the 2.9 release and earlier. The standard scan really was what we call the medium classic scan option. One big change that I think is important to understand is that this discovered filter ports open. Consider filter ports open, excuse me. So in many cases, when we're scanning for open ports on an IP address, depending on your network configuration, a port may report back as filtered. In ultra-fast, super-fast, and fast, we do not consider a filtered port as open. We only consider that open on the medium classic, the slow, and the ultra slow. So on the medium classic, especially with like port 161, you definitely want to be able to edit that and have consider filtered ports open. And again, you can only edit these predefined modes in the Enterprise Edition. And so with these options, again, I can change the mode that I'm using. So for example, I could go to ultra fast and you'll see that these fields down below changed on me. I can go to medium and again, the fields changed. If I override any of these fields, so for example, if I want to go to SSH running on port 5022 and save that, now when I come up, I've got that option set, and I'm going to actually look for connectivity on port 5022 rather than on port 22. So again, a great deal of flexibility that's here in this. In addition, I do want to call your attention to the discovery logs table. This is brand new. We've done a ton of work in here as far as providing feedback and a higher level of messaging in here. So we're showing you the commands. We're showing you the output of those commands. We're differentiating between notices, logs, and success. And then if you go to the devices list, we break it out even further. So we're providing an actual analysis of the results. So for example, you can see SNMP detected, but no valid SNMP credentials found. And then right from here, you have an add button. So I can add SNMP credentials immediately and then rerun this scan right away. And then further in the issues, no valid credentials found. So that immediately tells me what's wrong and why this device is unclassified or unknown. And so it goes. Again, we try to break down as much as possible. No management protocols for 192, 168, 8860. So lots of different things that are available here. Lots of good information for us. Again, the idea is to provide as much information as possible in one spot regarding the audit, so you can very quickly turn around and remediate these issues very, very quickly. We'll be updating the view in the discovery log under each device as well in the future to be much more robust, similar to the output that you see here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our webinar for today. I want to thank you all very much for your time. It has been my pleasure. I enjoy putting these on. I hope you've enjoyed your time here today and found this, the topics we covered beneficial. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. That is my personal contact information on the screen there. So you can reach me at markh@augmantic.com. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. If you're interested in talking about a commercial license for either professional or enterprise, please reach out to USA@opmantic.com, and one of our account executives will be happy to reach back out to you and talk to you about pricing and availability. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you again at a future webinar.